She stood alone on that stage, silenced by a world that refused to hear her voice. But what happened next would break every rule, shatter every heart, and prove that love speaks louder than words ever could. Maya Chen had lived in silence for 17 years, not the peaceful kind that brings solace, but the suffocating kind that comes when the world decides your voice doesn't matter because it sounds different. Born unable to speak, she learned early that silence could be both her prison and her power. Her fingers spoke on piano keys in ways her lips never could, creating symphonies that made grown men weep and stone hearts crack open. But Lincoln Heights Preparatory Academy wasn't interested in her symphonies. They were interested in perfection, and perfection came with a voice. Across town, in the penthouse suite of the Chen Music Conservatory, lived the boy who had everything Maya didn't. Ethan Laurent possessed the kind of voice that college scouts fought over, the kind of talent that came wrapped in privilege and tied with a bow of family legacy. His mother, Ethan Laurent, sat on the school board. His father funded half the music department. When Ethan spoke, people listened. When he sang, they worshipped. But behind those perfect notes lived a boy drowning in expectations, suffocating under the weight of a future he never chose. The school's annual winter showcase was Lincoln Heights' most prestigious event. Every student dreamed of performing on that stage, under those lights, in front of the scouts and donors who could change a life with a single nod. Maya had dreamed of it too, practiced until her fingers bled, poured every silent scream and swallowed tear into Chopin and Debussy. When she submitted her audition tape, she believed for one foolish moment that talent might matter more than her disability. Principal Morrison delivered the rejection himself, his eyes avoiding hers like she was something broken he couldn't fix. The spot would go to someone who could engage the audience verbally. He explained, someone who could introduce their piece, thank the sponsors, represent the school with eloquence, someone who could speak. The pianist spot was going to Vanessa Cross, daughter of a state senator, whose playing was technically perfect but emotionally hollow. The decision, Morrison assured her, was final. Maya stood in the empty music room that afternoon, her hands trembling above the keys of the old Steinway. Rage and grief twisted inside her chest like barbed wire. She had spent years proving that silence didn't mean absence, that her music spoke volumes, but none of it mattered. To them, she would always be less than, incomplete, broken. That's when Ethan walked in. He had heard about the rejection from his mother at dinner, mentioned casually between bites of filet mignon like it was nothing. Like crushing a girl's dreams was just another agenda item. Something in his chest had twisted wrong at the indifference in his mother's voice. He found Maya with her head bowed over the piano, shoulders shaking with soundless sobs that somehow felt louder than any scream. He didn't say anything at first, just sat beside her on the bench and placed his hands on the keys, started playing the bass line to her favorite Chopin nocturne. Maya's head snapped up, eyes wide and wet with tears. Their gazes met, and something shifted. She joined him, their hands dancing across the keys in perfect harmony, a conversation in music that needed no words. When the last note faded, Ethan turned to her and signed awkwardly, his movements clumsy but earnest. He had learned basic sign language in middle school, forgotten most of it, but remembered enough to spell out, "I'm sorry." Maya stared at him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. Ethan Laurent, golden boy, born with every privilege, apologizing to her. She signed back with graceful precision. "Why, you didn't reject me." "No," he signed slowly, "but I've been silent about things that matter for too long." From that moment, something changed between them. Ethan started showing up to the music room during Maya's practice sessions. At first, he just listened, sitting in the shadows while she poured her heart into the keys. Then he started bringing her coffee, the fancy kind from the shop near his house that she couldn't afford. Then they started practicing together, him on vocals, her on piano, creating something that felt electric and dangerous and completely against every rule his family stood for. His mother noticed first. Ethan Laurent didn't miss anything, especially when it involved her son's reputation. She cornered Ethan in his room one evening, her voice sharp as broken glass. "That girl," she said, meaning Maya, "you need to stay away from her. It looks inappropriate. People are talking." Ethan felt something in him rebel for the first time in his life. "What people?" he demanded. "People who think she's less than human because she can't speak. Those people." Catherine's eyes narrowed. "Don't be dramatic. It's about optics. You're going to Juilliard. You have scouts watching your every move. Associating with someone like her sends the wrong message. Someone like her, Ethan's voice rose. You mean someone more talented than half the students you approved for the showcase? His mother's slap echoed in the silence that followed. When she spoke again, her voice was ice. You will end this friendship, or I will make sure that girl regrets ever stepping foot in this school. Do you understand me? Maya knew about the confrontation because Ethan came to her the next day with a bruise blooming across his cheek and determination burning in his eyes. He found her in the library, surrounded by silence and books, and that perpetual loneliness that followed her everywhere. He sat down across from her and signed with more confidence than before. I need to tell you something. She watched his hands move, explaining his mother's threats, his own awakening, the rage that had been building in him his entire life at a system that valued image over substance, privilege over talent, voice over truth. But it was his next words that stopped her heart. I think I'm falling for you, he signed, and I don't care who knows it. Maya's hands shook as she signed back. Your mother will destroy me. Then let her try, Ethan responded. But I'm done being silent about things that matter. And you matter, Maya. You matter more than any of this. What followed was a love story conducted in stolen moments and secret glances. They met in the music room after hours, where Maya taught Ethan her language and he taught her his. Their fingers intertwined on piano keys and in the spaces between words. He learned to read her expressions like music sheets, understanding the subtle ways her eyes changed when she was happy, hurt, or harboring something she couldn't express. She learned to trust someone who saw her as whole, not broken. But Ethan Laurent kept her promises. She started with small cruelties, reassigning Maya's locker to a location 3 floors away from her classes. Then she had Maya's scholarship application mysteriously delayed. Then came the rumors, whispered in hallways and bathrooms, painting Maya as desperate, predatory, using Ethan for his connections. The words cut deeper than any blade, because they echoed the lies Maya had heard her whole life, that she was less, that she had to take what others gave freely, that she didn't deserve to be seen as equal. Ethan fought back the only way he knew how. He held Maya's hand in the hallways, letting everyone see, sat with her at lunch, ignoring the whispers. He learned more sign language, practiced until his fingers moved with confidence, until he could tell her, I love you without hesitation or doubt. Every gesture was an act of rebellion, every touch a declaration of war against a system built to keep them apart. The breaking point came 3 weeks before the winter showcase. Maya discovered that her music composition entry for the state competition had been disqualified for technical violations she never made. The same day, Ethan overheard his mother on the phone with Principal Morrison, discussing how to encourage the Chen girl to transfer schools to avoid further disappointment. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Catherine wasn't just trying to separate them, she was trying to erase Maya entirely. That night, Ethan made a decision that would change everything. He called an emergency meeting with his father, laid out evidence of his mother's harassment, threatened to withdraw from Juilliard, to walk away from everything they'd built for him unless they let Maya perform at the showcase. His father, a man of few words but deep integrity, had been watching his wife's campaign with growing unease. He gave his son a long, measuring look, then nodded once. 2 days later, Maya received a formal letter of apology from Principal Morrison and an invitation to perform at the winter showcase. The pianist spot was being expanded to include 2 performers. She would share the stage with Vanessa Cross. It wasn't everything, but it was something. It was a start. But Ethan Laurent wasn't finished. She couldn't control the school board anymore, not with her husband's opposition, but she could control her son. The night before the showcase, she issued an ultimatum. Choose, she told Ethan, that girl or your future. Perform tomorrow with my blessing. Go to Juilliard, have everything we've planned for you, or throw it all away for some fantasy that will burn out in 6 months. Ethan looked at his mother with eyes that no longer saw her as untouchable. Then he walked out. The next evening, Lincoln Heights Preparatory's auditorium filled with the city's elite, scouts from every major conservatory, donors in designer suits, parents expecting perfection from their perfect children. The lights dimmed, the curtain rose. Vanessa Cross performed first, her Rachmaninoff technically flawless and emotionally vacant, earning polite applause that meant nothing and everything. Then came the announcement that stopped hearts. The next performance would feature Maya Chen on piano, with accompaniment by Ethan Laurent on vocals. The whispers started immediately. a wave of shock and scandal. Ethan Laurent stood from her seat in the front row, her face a mask of fury. But she couldn't leave, not without causing a scene, and appearances were everything to her. Maya walked onto that stage in a simple black dress, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Behind her, Ethan appeared in his formal attire, his hand finding hers for one brief moment before they took their positions. She sat at the piano, he stood beside it, and they began. Maya's fingers touched the keys, and the auditorium fell into a silence so complete you could hear breathing. She played Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, but not the way anyone had heard it before. She poured 17 years of voiceless screaming into those notes, every rejection and cruel word and moment of feeling invisible. The music swelled and broke and rebuilt itself, raw and honest and devastating. Then Ethan began to sing, not words from any song, but something he'd written for her, set to her melody. His voice wrapped around her piano like a conversation, question and answer, pain and healing. He sang about silence that speaks louder than noise, about love that breaks rules, about a girl who taught him what courage really means. His hands moved as he sang, signing the words in perfect synchronization with his voice, bridging the gap between her world and theirs. Halfway through the performance, Maya did something no one expected. She stopped playing. The silence stretched, terrifying and electric. Then she stood, turned to face the audience, and began to sign. Ethan translated, his voice strong and clear and unashamed. "Music is my voice." Maya signed, and Ethan spoke. "Silence is not absence. It is presence. It is meaning. It is power. You taught me that I was broken because I communicate differently. But you were wrong. I am not broken. I am different. And different is not less." She turned back to the piano, Ethan beside her, and they finished the piece together. When the final note faded, the silence lasted 3 heartbeats. Then the auditorium erupted. Not polite applause, but standing ovations, tears streaming down faces, scouts frantically taking notes. In the front row, Ethan Laurent sat frozen, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. But Maya wasn't watching the audience. She was watching Ethan, who was watching her like she was the only thing in the universe that mattered. When they left the stage, he pulled her into the wings and kissed her like a man breathing air for the first time. She kissed him back like music, each movement a note in a symphony only they could hear. The aftermath came in waves. 3 conservatories offered Maya full scholarships. The video of her performance went viral, shared millions of times with comments demanding change, celebrating her courage, sharing stories of others who'd been silenced for being different. Lincoln Heights Preparatory was forced to review their inclusion policies. Principal Morrison quietly retired. Ethan Laurent lost her position on the school board, her reputation damaged beyond repair by her attempts to sabotage a disabled student. But none of that mattered as much as what happened after. Ethan showed up at Maya's apartment the next morning with coffee and a question signed in perfect form. "Will you practice with me today?" She signed back, grinning. Every day, he pulled out his phone and showed her something that made her breath catch. An email from Juilliard, offering them both admission. They could attend together, study together, build a future together. His mother had tried to make him choose between Maya and his dreams. But he'd found a way to have both because they were the same thing. 6 months later, they graduated from Lincoln Heights. Ethan gave the valedictorian speech in spoken English and sign language, his hands moving as fluently as his voice. Maya performed at the ceremony, playing an original composition she titled The Silent Piano, dedicated to everyone who'd ever been told their voice didn't matter. But the story doesn't end with graduation or acceptance letters or viral videos. It ends on a different stage, in a different city, 3 years later. Maya stands at a grand piano in Juilliard's concert hall, older now, more confident, her hands poised above the keys. Beside her stands Ethan, no longer the boy who apologized in broken sign language, but a man who speaks her language as fluently as his own. They're performing their senior recital, a piece they composed together that blends vocals and piano into something that transcends both. In the audience sits a little girl of 7, wearing hearing aids, watching them with wide eyes full of wonder. Her mother leans down and whispers something, pointing at the stage. The girl's face lights up because she sees herself in Maya, sees possibility where others told her there was only limitation. When the performance ends, Maya and Ethan take their bows together, hands intertwined. Ethan turns to her and signs something the audience can't see. She smiles, signs back, and they kiss to thunderous applause. What did they say? Only they know. And maybe that's how it should be. Some things are meant to be private, sacred, understood only by the two people who fought for the right to love each other. But later that night, alone in their shared apartment, surrounded by sheet music and coffee mugs and the comfortable chaos of a life built together, Maya sits at the keyboard while Ethan watches from the doorway. She plays softly, just for him, a new melody she's been working on. He crosses the room, sits beside her, and adds harmony. Their music fills the space, a conversation without words, a love story told in notes and silences. Ethan pulls out his phone and shows her something. An article about a new program at Lincoln Heights, named after her, specifically designed to support students with disabilities in the arts. Real support, not hollow promises. Resources and accommodations, and the message that different doesn't mean less. Dozens of students have already been accepted, given chances they would have been denied before. Maya reads the article, tears streaming down her face. Ethan wipes them away and signs a question. Was it worth it? All the pain, the fighting, the risk. She takes his hands, guides them back to the piano keys, and together they play. Their answer isn't in words or signs, but in music, in the space between notes where silence speaks loudest. Yes, their melody says, every moment, every sacrifice, every risk, because love that requires you to hide is not love at all, and silence that carries truth is louder than any voice. But there's something else too, something Maya hasn't told him yet, something that makes her heart race and her hands tremble with joy and terror. She reaches into her pocket and pulls out a small white stick. Ethan's eyes widen as he reads the two lines. The positive result, the future they didn't plan but suddenly can't imagine living without. His hands move to sign a question, but she stops him, placing his palm against her stomach where new life is just beginning to form. For the first time in 3 years, fear flickers across his face. They're young, still students, barely able to support themselves, let alone a child. His mother has barely spoken to him since the showcase. His family fractured by choices he still believes were right, but that haunt him in quiet moments. How can they do this? Maya sees the fear, understands it, shares it, but she also sees something else. Something she learned on that stage 3 years ago, when she stopped playing and chose to speak in her own language. She takes his hands and signs with confidence and grace. We will teach our child that there are many ways to speak, many ways to love, many ways to be whole. We will teach them that silence can be powerful, that difference is beautiful, that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward anyway. We will teach them what you taught me, that being seen is worth fighting for. Ethan's eyes fill with tears as he pulls her close, his hands signing against her back. I'm scared, he admits. So am I, she signs back. But we'll be scared together. They sit there for a long time, wrapped in each other, the piano silent now but somehow still singing. Outside, the city moves on, indifferent to their story. But that doesn't matter. Their story was never for the city or the school board or the people who tried to silence Maya. It was always just for them. Two people who found each other in the spaces between words and built something that couldn't be broken by prejudice or privilege or the expectations of others. 9 months later, Maya gives birth to a daughter with Ethan's eyes and her determination. They name her Aria, meaning melody, a name that works in both spoken English and sign language. As they hold her for the first time in that hospital room, exhausted and terrified and more in love than ever, Ethan signs a question over their daughter's tiny head. What happens next? Maya smiles, her answer simple and perfect. We teach her to use her voice, whatever form it takes. We teach her that love speaks louder than judgment. We teach her that silence, when chosen, is powerful, but silence forced upon you by others is violence. We teach her to fight, and they do. They teach Aria sign language and spoken English simultaneously, raising her bilingual in ways that matter. They teach her piano, and she shows early talent that makes Maya's heart sing. They teach her that her grandfather Laurent, who eventually reconciled with Ethan and begged forgiveness for his silence during Catherine's campaign, made mistakes but found redemption in acknowledging them. They teach her that her grandmother Laurent is someone who exists but is not welcome in their lives, because some bridges burned deserve to stay ash. Most importantly, they teach her their story. Not a fairy tale where love conquers all effortlessly, but the truth, messy and painful and beautiful. They teach her about the showcase, about the choice Ethan made, about the courage Maya found. They teach her that love is not just feeling but action, not just emotion but choice, not just romance but revolution. Years pass. Aria grows up confident and kind, fluent in 3 languages, counting music as her first. She sees her mother perform at Carnegie Hall, her father teach at Juilliard. Their love story become legend among students who need to believe that fighting for acceptance is worth it. But she also sees the quiet moments. Her parents playing piano together in the early morning before the world wakes. Their hands speaking in harmonies that need no audience. On Aria's 10th birthday, Maya takes her back to Lincoln Heights Preparatory, now transformed by the program that bears her name. They walk through hallways where students of every ability learn together, where accommodation is expectation rather than exception, where different is celebrated rather than hidden. In the music room, that same old Steinway sits waiting. Maya sits on the bench, Aria beside her, and they play together. A teacher walks in, young and eager, and freezes when she sees them. She signs quickly, excitedly, telling them she's deaf, that she watched Maya's performance video 100 times in college, that it made her believe she could teach music, despite everyone saying it was impossible, that she got this job because of the program Maya's courage created. Maya signs back, her movements graceful and sure. Tell your students that silence is not weakness. Tell them that different is not less. Tell them that love, real love, is choosing to see someone completely and loving them more because of it, not in spite of it. The teacher nods, crying now, and Aria watches her mother with understanding beyond her years. She sees what Maya and Ethan built, not just a family but a legacy. Not just a love story but a revolution conducted in whispers and shouts, and the spaces between notes where truth lives. That night, back home, Ethan asks Maya a question he's asked 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. Do you regret anything? She signs her answer slowly, making sure he understands every word. I regret every moment I believed I was broken. I regret every time I stayed silent when I should have fought. I regret that it took your courage to wake up my own. But I do not regret us. I could never regret us. He kisses her, and their daughter watches from the doorway, already learning what love looks like when it's real. Already understanding that the best stories do not end with happily ever after, but with the choice to build happiness every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So what would you do in their place? Would you fight for love that everyone said was wrong? Would you risk everything for someone the world called broken? Would you stand on that stage and demand to be seen, even knowing the cost? Would you choose courage over comfort, truth over silence, love over everything else? Because that's what Maya and Ethan chose, not once in some grand romantic gesture, but every day in small moments, and large ones in the decision to hold hands, despite whispers to sign in public, despite stares to love loudly in a world that demanded they love quietly or not at all. They chose each other when it was hard, and they kept choosing each other when it got harder. And that's not a fairy tale. That's real love, messy and complicated, and absolutely worth fighting for. Their piano sits in the corner now, waiting for the next time they'll play together, for the next moment when silence speaks louder than words, for the next reminder that some love stories do want follow the rules, because the rules were never made for people like them. And maybe that's the real revolution. Not changing the world, but refusing to let the world change you. Refusing to be silent when silence means accepting less than you deserve. Refusing to love quietly when love demands to be heard. So tell me, what would you do? Would you be brave enough to love like Maya and Ethan? Would you fight for someone the world told you wasn't worth fighting for? Would you stand on that stage and demand to be seen? Because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that they're worth it, that their voice matters even if it sounds different, that their love deserves to exist loudly and proudly and without apology. Someone needs to hear that silence is not weakness, that different is not less, and that the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be silent about things that matter. What would you do?